Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Hello Player One, where we discuss and explore the intersection of business and marketing in the metaverse. I'm your host, Jack, and today my guests are Lorenzo and Lucien from Flippit.ai. So I want to describe it as just a no-code tool to create personalities for animated AI characters. And I think that is just a way where players or creators can create characters, dialogue for the characters, but also show the emotions via the avatar visually. So it's just very cool. So guys, welcome, and I'd love to hear talk more about the software.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Jack. Hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. Super excited to be here.
Same here. Thanks for hosting us. A real pleasure to be there.
Great. So, there are two of you guys, and so I'd love to hear just a quick background on each of you guys before we dig into the company and why you guys started it.
So on my side, I have quite of an unusual background for someone who is building into gaming because I have an economical background. I've been into finance most of my professional career, if not all. But I've been a gamer since I was 5 years old. When my parents bought me my Game Boy with Pokemon Red, and that changed my life because it drove me to something new in my life, which was a new kind of entertainment, being used to um, cartoons, etc. Being able to use something that was interactive and I could have fun with was kind of revolutionary. And that came with me throughout my whole life. Even today, I play video games, even though I'm a little bit older. So that's it. And I've always wanted to do something in gaming. And I think we can talk about it a bit more later. But when I saw the AI trend, which I've been studying for a while, I thought that there was going to be something huge for the gaming industry, and I thought there were a lot of opportunities to catch.
Great.
Yeah, and on my side, it's also something that is quite unusual. For a while, I was between being a professional rugby player and a proper engineer. So I did both actually for quite some times. And then I graduated and I found a job in a London-based startup. I loved it, and I start getting the hang of developing and also digging into AI. And I took the decision to do a PhD at this point, where I dropped my job and started this PhD, where the subject was around how to apply, let's say, AI techniques and especially deep learning techniques into the human behavior, how humans behave, and how we can teach the machine to actually understand and even generate some behaviors. And so, based on this technology, at the end of my PhD, I was like, "This is really cool." I also have been a gamer for forever, so I was like, "Okay, I need to apply this technology. I really want to get this out of the lab." And basically, after that, we're gonna get into this, but we met with Lorenzo, and that was a natural way of applying this technology to such a cool use case. So yeah, that's pretty much.
Cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you guys are seeing in the AI trends because I don't follow it as much. So love to hear more about that before we get into how you guys arrived at what you're building. So Lorenzo, why don't we start with you? AI trends.
So yeah, as I was mentioning, I've personally been studying artificial intelligence for a while, even before it became a trend. I'm not come from an engineering background or artificial intelligence background, but I've always seen the potential of machine learning to complete new tasks autonomously. And what was the, let's say, the groundbreaking thing for me was seeing a machine being able to learn to beat humans in a video game. Again, the video game, I think it was Go, in 2015, 2016. And that was a bit of a iPhone moment for me. I said, okay, this is something that can change the course of the human's history. But coming back to the gaming and how AI will change the gaming industry. Actually, building a video game is quite a complex task. It entails complex technical skills and artistical ones. I mean, you will need to come up with rigs for our characters, cool 3D assets, etc. And you need to make sure that these things are all connected together in a fun and engaging experience, especially in 3 dimensions. What's happening is that it's a democratization of the access to game development. On the one hand, you have possibilities to create 3D assets like tapping, as you would tap to your friend. Just say create these things, and magically it appears. That's something incredibly powerful. On the one hand, it boosts the creativity process, and on the other, it accelerates the game development phase. And on the other, you have these large language models, but more in general, let's say foundational models, which give you the possibility of generating code, generating dialogues, generating complex interactions, and text content, which basically enables anybody, even maybe the lesser creative ones, to be able to generate a video game, which is something super powerful. And to the way we see it, this is going to create a new category of, let's say, professionals in the game. We call them game creators. And the stress on this point, on the creative part, is because you don't necessarily need to be a developer to do that. You just need to be willing to build a game and to have some sort of understanding of what makes a fun experience for a video game player.
Okay, great. And yeah, so Lucien, what about you? Like, what are some of the AI trends that you saw that you're really excited about?
Yeah, definitely. So I think everyone knew about ChatGPT, for example, which basically highlight what it's called large language models. And these are quite powerful for some tasks. And there's another, let's say, framework together that chain up with the large language models. It's called agents, and there's many framework. The most famous one, for example, is called LangChain. There's others like the Cheshire Cat, where basically you can build application on top of large language models. And there is a big trend, especially in the open source community, pushing for getting like new large language models that are more and more efficient. There is a lot of research in many topics to make sure that we can ingest a lot of data. We can make sure that what we generate makes sense, have some kind of understanding of the world and the environment within it. And so these frameworks allows basically new kind of application where you can use for the full potential of large language models to actually perform other tasks and combine different other, let's say, AI techniques. So you can basically give access to different tools. So the large language model will understand your request because of its understanding of the dialogue. And then you can plug it to the tools and perform actions and actually make sure that you can have a much more fine-tuned control of the output of the large language model, which is one of the big limitations as well. So I would say that the two main trends that I can see is that there is a very, very active community in the open source world that is pushing a lot, and these new trends around frameworks that such as LangChains that are unlocking new applications built on large language models.
So I'm not sure which one of you guys would be the best to explain, but can you guys just take 2-3 minutes to explain like what is LLM and how it works, and how does the input work, how does the output work?
Sure, I think I can go on this one. So, so I'll try to keep it high level so we can understand. But basically, a large language model, as it's said in the name, it's having a language model to understand the world. So basically, it creates what we call embeddings, which is a mathematical representation of words and even sentences, and more globally, the way the language works. That's why it took some time to actually understand different kind of languages, because of course the main one was English, but there was different grammatical structure, different, let's say, way to construct sentence and languages. That's why basically creating these embeddings is an abstraction for the machine to understand the different links between the words, between the sentence, etc. So the first step is about creating these embeddings, and then based on this language model, all the keys and rules that language has, we can actually generate the most probable next word depending on the context. So this is exactly what ChatGPT, for example, is doing. But any large language model is basically generating the most probable word based on its understanding of the world. And so basically, the way it works is that you're going to train different models to learn these embeddings, to learn the best representation possible, and you will basically, from the text input that you give as a user, it will convert it into this understanding of the world and then generate coherent dialogues, or I mean text. And this is something that is also interesting. There is more and more advance as well in coupling this large language model with, as I mentioned, different tools. And one of them is something that we work on at Flippit as well, is to actually link different modalities. And a modality can be, for example, the text, but it can also be image. It can be a different kind of representation of the world, let's say, and we can combine these embeddings. And by doing this, we are working on what it's called co-speech gesture generation. And that's something that you can actually link the speech with the animations, let's say, the movements, the nonverbal behavior. And this is done basically because you teach the machine to learn a mathematical representation of the world and the environment, let's say. So this is the key to basically unlock this kind of application.
Okay. I think that was a great explanation. I have a much better understanding of how it works. And I have, yeah, like this is the first time I'm hearing someone explain. So great. It's good. So
Glad.
is there one big LLM, let's say for the English language, and is there a separate one for like something that's completely different, like Chinese, right? Or maybe a different language that is very different from, like a Latin-based language.
So initially, yes, because when it started, it has to start somewhere. But now with there is a lot of progress, and basically now you can have multiple different tasks, because the broader topic is natural language processing, NLP, which LLMs are a small part of the NLP. So basically, initially, yes, because we were figuring things out along the way, but now the capabilities of these models are very advanced. And the most advanced LLMs are totally okay with translating, transcribing. There's many tasks that it can do in many different languages. You can even speak, for example, myself in French and get a response in English. It will be
Oh, okay.
automatically translated, etc. There is a lot of advancement in this field, but it's true. It's also true that some smaller model might perform better in specific tasks that for a specific language. But the power of large language model is that it can cover a large, let's say, range of different tasks with different languages, etc. But in terms of pure performance, it might be more efficient to have one model very specific to one use case. But yeah, that's another debate, an open debate, to be honest. That's right now we have models capable of understanding multiple languages along the way.
Got it. Cool. So based on just, the last couple of minutes, right? My understanding of how AI works, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, right, is that AI takes like words right, and maps them to math, like, you're right, and on the various algorithms, whatever. But it's using math to predict what words should come after. And I'm guessing the words that come after that it generates, that it predicts, has some type of mathematical score.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
it ranks like, well, this is better than the next one, and then it outputs the best one. But then when the users see it, they can say, no, I don't like this one. And so they downgrades it. And then there's some feedback mechanism that lowers the score for that generated text. And so that's, in essence, is what AI is. Is that, am
Yeah,
I like close?
yeah, you're very close. And to give you a
Okay.
concrete example, for example, let's say two words like, let's take four words: king, queen, man, woman. These are somehow related, but it's very hard to prioritize one over the other. So they have meaning. They are concepts that as human we understand these concepts, but the machine doesn't. So basically, what are embeddings is a vector, so like a list of different numbers that is the abstraction of all the relationships between different worlds. So, for example, king is related to queen, but is also a man, and there is different hierarchy between a man and a king. It's different. So, this basically the AI will learn it by seeing a lot of data. And it's not necessarily a human. You can add a human in the loop to give feedback to the machine. That's also done. But the whole point of having what we call big data is that the model can learn the most efficient, and we have metrics to say this is a good probable word, sorry. So if the algorithm got it wrong in the metric, then it will correct all the different what we call weight to then modify his understanding of the world. And this will be basically by seeing a lot of data and correcting bit by bit. And of course, if you want to add a human, it's slightly more complex, but it's also possible to kind of putting this when, especially on some edge cases, it's very useful. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So great, you know, foundation for, the rest of it, this conversation. Okay. So now let's get to, what you guys saw, like why build Flippit. So maybe Lorenzo, maybe you can
Yeah, no, no.
start.
I mean, we both were involved in the decision, so now we make. But maybe I don't know if it's relevant or you want to discuss it later, like how we came up to this idea, which opportunity we saw, etc. You already mentioned a bit the trends in the let's see how AI is gonna impact the gaming industry in general, creative industries. That's not just the gaming one, but creative industries in general. Um, as you were mentioning, our story starts. We did an accelerator, which is a really cool accelerator. It's a talent accelerator for brilliant minds. It's called From Entrepreneur First. We met during this accelerator. We started to pair up, and because we had a lot of things in common, we both were gamers. We both believed that artificial intelligence had the potential to really change the course of humanity at this stage, at this point in time, in this 2023. Um, and we decided to investigate possible applications of the of this technology of artificial intelligence in general. Of course, the startup process is that you identify a problem and you come up with solutions. So we did that, of course. At the beginning, we were still in the game. We were trying to leveraging, Lucien didn't mention it, but Lucien's PhD is in a specific part of artificial intelligence, affective computing, which studies how machines understand humans' behaviors and emotions. So we were using this technology to help game makers, game developers, understand during the playtest phase whether or not a game was going to be fun, which kind of reactions and emotions were going to be generated. But we soon realized that this kind of information was quite difficult for humans to digest because, of course, the technology is a bit early, so it's a bit complicated to automate the whole process and have at the end a final decision whether or not the game is fun or not. And our customers, could not really understand the output that we were providing them. But the conversation that we were having with them were okay, but guys, I need engagement in my game. I need fun. I need to have these people stay in the game for longer so that I can monetize. And the funny thing, the idea came actually. I know that you Jack have experience with mobile game development. The idea came during a conversation with a mobile game developer, where they mentioned, guys, with paid with the whole change in paid advertisement, etc. I cannot really track engagement, but I need something in my game that can tell me whether or not a game is engaging. And so we iterated a bit on a couple of solutions, and finally we, let's say, crafted this idea of placing engagement assets within a game. Now, this is something that kind of exists. NPCs are not something new, but they're not something necessarily engaging. Most likely, if you look at most games, you find NPCs that say 2 3 words or that are there to provide quests or sell weapons. But there's that. So the engagement level that they can provide is really low. And so we thought, how can we use this to increase engagement for game developers and the future game creators? That's how we come up with the idea of AI powered NPCs. And the way we see it is that, apart from, of course, providing new ways of generating game stories, game designs possibilities, it's really about in boosting the engagement of the game. Our early tests, and we can deep dive a bit later, like they show that engagement increases by 30% just by placing an NPC, regardless of how you any NPC, regardless of how which kind of personality you give it to him. The reason is that players are drawn to these NPCs, these characters. They want to engage, and they finally have the chance to engage with them. So that's something really cool that we've seen, and that's why we are here doing that.
Okay, great. Lucien, do you want to add anything?
I mean, no, that was the story, and I have to say that this time during the accelerator was really interesting because we had the chance to iterate, and we always had something similar in the back of our mind, and when we finally start doing it, it was like uh, yeah, the aha moment where you say, yeah, that's the right thing to do. So that was a really fun time as well.
Great. So, Lorenzo, I love how you simplify the product, which is just AI powered NPCs, right? Like it was a lot better than like my introduction. So, and I get it, right? Because like I was just playing an RPG game, right? It's one of the new ones that just released, so you guys can figure out what that is. But yeah, like there's in this game there's tons of NPCs everywhere, and they all have the same exact dialogue for every single player that comes up to it. It doesn't have any context to what type of player I am, like what quests I've done, right? What um what items I've purchased, right, from like the NPC, and what maybe what how much of the dialogue I skipped, right? It would be very interesting if I just saw somehow like, oh, I noticed like you purchased this item. What do you think about these? Like, it makes it very unique, and it definitely will capture my attention because I'm like, wait, like it's saying something personalized to me,
Yeah.
and that's the problem I think you're trying to solve. I don't know if you're solving, but that's the opportunity. Is you're creating like in-game personalization for every single player.
Yeah.
So when I first heard about this, I thought it was very cool. Um, the next part is you generate the dialogue, yes, right? That's cool. But now you attach the animation to it. So that's just like next step. And I'd love to hear like more about how that works and what the integration looks like.
Sure.
Okay, I think Christian, you can definitely
Yeah,
give advice.
definitely. So there's multiple steps involved here. I briefly mentioned something earlier that I'll come back to it, but basically right now we developed our own engine that is able to map basically between what the personality of the character, but also the player input. As you said, this is fully personalized. And what we do is that we actually detect as well, if it's from text, we can do a small let's say, analysis on the words that are used, the sentiment that is out of it, but also from the voice, we can detect a lot of things. And by combining different elements, we give that to our algorithm that is then matching the best possible animation to the dialogue that is generated. So in that way, we manage to basically understand the context, the player, let's say, state, and respond in the most natural way possible. But this is unlocked thanks to agents that we briefly mentioned earlier, which basically allow us also to make the NPC aware of its environment, meaning that you can also say, okay, can you basically indicate me and walk me through this specific place in the map? And the agent will understand the request, understand the action that he needs to take, and actually perform the animation, generate the dialogues, and perform the action, meaning that he can move into the game. So this is something that we unlock as well, possibility for NPC to not be static. And we are working hard on this at the moment as well. I mentioned the co-speech gesture generation, and that's something that basically we want to generate the 3D body points in real time, meaning that instead of going from one animation to the other, even if it's very complex, you can still feel that it's not totally, let's say, natural. And we're working towards this to make it as natural as possible so that you always have kind of movements that is the most a bit like an LLM, large language model. You will predict the most probable pose for the next frame, for example. And we're going to do this so that the interaction is seamless and completely adaptive to the user. And in terms of integration, which is the other part, our goal is to make it simple to anyone, not only developers, but also any kind of creators. So we have different integrations in different game engines, such as Unity, for example. And what we do is that by downloading a plugin, by giving you access to the plugin, what we do is that in a couple of clicks, you just log into a platform and you drag and drop your character, put it in the scene, and voila. There is nothing else that you need to do because we take care of everything, like from the, let's say, interaction part where it will detect the player. Once you start engaging with it, it will basically capture everything from text or from audio and then respond back. So we really want to alleviate the work to make complex NPC, to make it simple to everyone, not only developers.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking, right, I was just thinking of applications of this, and again, like it's to me, it's just endless. So, and I was just reading a book on game design writing, particularly writing and how to create narrative, and it's talking about how depending on the character that you are, right, then the world should react to you differently, right, and that's really hard to do in writing because you have to create branches and things. And so the example I'm thinking of, right, is well, let's say GTA, Grand Theft Auto, right? You can be a good player, you can be a bad player, right? Like your sentiment, right, to other yeah, your sentiment towards other people is dependent on all your actions that you've taken before and whatever items you're carrying, right? So let's just say this Grand Theft player, Grand Theft Auto player walks up to a bar, talks to the bartender, right? If he doesn't hold a gun, the bartender would respond in a friendly way, right? If the character starts using, aggressive language, now the bartender can respond in this, regarding the same quest, right? A more defensive way, defensive dialogue. If the player presents, is carrying a gun, right? Because potentially this software could tell the AI that, right? Like based
Yeah.
on what items the player is carrying, right? If the player now is holding a gun, the bartender is now like scared and is responding in a very different way than another player. So I just think it's just really cool. And I see that there's essentially two big parts to the software. Why, right? One is just the dialogue generation part, and then the other is the like how the matching the animation. Yeah, like I mean, obviously, it's you guys are building two parts of this, but I just feel like the first part is such a easy integration and easy thing for developers to see, like, oh yeah, that's gonna easily add value to my game. Like, do you guys think that, or are you guys more focused on the second part?
So in terms of, let's say, technological focus, and then Lucien can deep dive on how we're doing this. But yes, of course, I mean, large language models have unlocked the possibility of dialogue generation. So I've made one part at least a bit easier, even though there is still an issue with large language models. One is that they don't have an understanding of reality. So if you place them in the open world, they will not understand what a car is. They know that probably a car, but they don't know what a car is and which are the consequences of being hit by a car, or a car running over something. And the so on this one, what we do is that through the agents framework that Lucien was mentioning, we feed knowledge to the character by either constraining. For instance, you may want your character to not have knowledge of the outside world, so you may not want your character to know what a Coca-Cola is, or to know what a Pepsi is, because he might probably lives in the Middle Ages, has no clue about what a soft drink is. And that's possible. And the other is that how to how do you make sure that in that interaction, which of course is one part dialogue, one part motion, you find the best possible motion on that part. And for this, of course, at the moment we are leveraging existing animations, uh, but our long-term goal, and we can come about the plan for 2 years, is to come up with a sort of large language model for animations, in the sense that we would input what's the best animation for that specific interaction, and we would be able to generate it quite live. So that's something that is powerful, is let's say a technological focus that is unlocked by large language models, which per se, they're basically giving a possibility to generate infinite text, even though again they don't have knowledge of reality. And on the other, they allow us to focus on this. So that's a bit how we see the product. And you're right, there are these two parts, but there is a third part which I think it's also quite important, and which is the integration into the game engine. Different game
Yeah.
engines, Roblox has its own game engine, Minecraft has its own game engine, there's Unity, Unreal, etc. They render motions in different ways. So a lot of our focus is how do we make sure that if the same character comes from Roblox, goes from Roblox to a Unity environment, is able to move in a similar way and does not have glitches, etc., etc. That's something that is in our focus. We'll probably as I fix it and work on it in the coming months and years. But that's something crucial, because in the metaverse, interoperability is something important, and it's not about just the avatar per se, but also the personality of these characters, which we somehow see as digital toys.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, let's get into a demo. What do you guys think?
Okay, go for it. Go,
Yeah.
Lucian.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Let me share my screen. So, okay, let me know when you can see.
okay, it's good. So
Cool.
this is the Flippit Studio.
Yeah, exactly. So you can, it's actually an alpha, but you can, if you go and log on our website, you can play around with the demo that we're going to do now. You can see it by yourself and play around. So, this is open. You just need to register. But basically here we took the example of Ready Player Me avatar, but we're working on allowing you to basically upload any kind of 3D model that you want. And, we're going to show you that we take care of, dialogues and animations. And the only thing you need to do here is to personalize the character. So for the sake of the demo, here we took the example of a magician. So this magician grew up among humans, is now using his powers to basically protect the forest with his magical skills. So you can give a personality trait, you have different options, and based on this, you can also add a voice so he can talk. And
So
basically,
quick question.
yeah.
What is the optimal length of the backstory?
So this is something we work on and test as we speak. But basically, the more details you give, the less, let's say, the less risk is. I mean, I would say that the more detail you give, the more it will adjust to what you have in mind. And every
Okay.
details that you do not give, it will come up with something which is always in the frame of his personality. And also, I'm insisting on this. We put strong guidelines to make sure it does not break the character. Do not say anything offensive or that can harm people, etc. We put in place some safeguards, let's say. But yeah, so for example, if you the more details you give, the more close to what you imagine for him will be. And
Okay.
we're working also on that's something that is not in the demo here, but with selected partners, we can also allow you to give different information that can be on the website or also as a private, let's say, private information. If we take the example of a brand, we can have a lot of information that is not publicly available, and having the avatar knowing this and referring to it when it presents a product or something like this. So that's something we can basically allow you to put as much as information as you need, so your avatar can be as close as possible to what you expect. And
Okay.
here, for example, we can just openly say, hey, how are you? Since he's optimistic, he should be friendly. And basically, it understands that you say hello, so he say hello back with the animation. So how can I assist you today? So since you're a magician, can you do some magic to see? And yeah, okay, of course I can
Oh,
perform some
okay.
magic. So I don't know, what kind of magic can you? I don't know. Can you levitate, for example? I like levitation. Okay, yeah, watch it. So basically, yes, you
So
can. It's open-ended.
okay,
Yeah,
so you said that this is using the Ready Player One avatar system. Is that right?
yeah.
Okay.
The 3D model. Yeah.
How much like animations have they created? Because the levitating doesn't seem like it's a normal animation.
Right. So I mean, there's we have our animation library, and
Okay.
basically, as I mentioned, right now we trying to fit the best probable animation depending on what is being said and the personality, etc. So we have our own animation libraries. There,
Okay. So you
of
guys created the levitating.
I
No, not
mean,
necessarily.
on this one, no. Yeah. There is a mix on open animations and custom animations.
I
So
see.
of course, for basics, for example, and this one in particular, the levitation, you have open source animation that you can take. But the good thing about it is that yes, it's one thing to generate the animation, to have it. So we have also our own custom animations. But the other thing is when to play it, because here, so it's a web version. It's the web app. But basically, when you integrate into a game like Unity, right now the state is that you need a developer that will say when someone says something like this or trigger this option, you need to play this animation and come back to an idle pose. And then when he will
Yeah.
talk about this, you need to match everything. Here,
It's
it's
a
completely
big
dynamic.
it's a really big if case
Yeah,
Yeah.
coding, right? Like I get it because I'm a coder. I used to be a coder, but you're saying that what they need to do, what a developer needs to do now is just feed the inputs into like an API and then you return what to do.
So as a developer, the only thing you need to do is to connect to your account and drag and drop your character in your scene. That's only what you need to do.
Yeah.
And then as a player, of course, when you come, so you can, as a developer, you can also set, for example, you want to interact when the player is very close, or you can interact even when the player is far. These are the kind of settings you have the control on. And then once the character is in the scene, I mean, the player for now only need a internet connection, and when you talk to it, it's just gonna
Yeah.
basically call our models with our APIs. But as a developer, you don't need to take care of the all the
Yeah.
behavioral tree and all the dialogues because we do it for you.
So what happens if you ask it to do something and it doesn't have the matching animation, does it tries to pick one that's close based on like some score, or does it not do anything?
So there's different logic behind it. Basically, our model right now, if you don't have the perfect animation, it will try to pick the one that makes more sense. But
Okay,
there is one thing that, because for example, you so if you ask, can you fly? He will understand that levitating is close and play the levitation. If
got it.
there is, I don't know, I don't have a particular example in mind, but if the concept is too far from, for example, levitation, it will not play levitation just for the sake of levitating. It will
Yeah.
play a default animation, and we have a lot of varieties according to its personality trait as well. That's something, for example, if you have different example, if it's shy, it will have different kind of fallback animation to make sure that it's still aligned with the character and the backstory. But yeah, of course, we're expanding day over day the set of animations so we can cover most of it. And as we were mentioning, we're also leaning towards a more complex model that will generate these behaviors, and we won't have this problem anymore in the long run.
Cool. Just great. Thanks for showing the demo. So let's maybe talk about who's using it right now, who's testing it, and what are some of the feedback that you've gotten.
So currently we have over, so the what we showed you is openly available on our website, and I think we have over 1,000 people subscribed to that. Of course, as you see, it's limited, but we are running closed beta for selected customers. These are people that have believed in us from day one. They see the potential, like of our technology, and what we are doing with them is that we have built a more advanced let's say interface and an engine for what you see, which is much more refined in what and how they can input information to the character. For instance, Lucien was mentioning it before. You can feed more information in terms of web content. You can feed text information through documents, and you also have the opportunity to define primary goals of the character, which are the things that it cannot do. For instance, you may not want the character to move. You want him to stand in a specific position because that's how you design the game. And or you may want to define specific catchphrases for the character because you have envisioned it for that way. And so these are the things that we do. One thing that we are enabling soon is the possibility to upload your own animations and rig it automatically to your character. So for instance, we are working with some customers who want their character to break dance. This is an animation that they want to do in a specific way, so they provide us the file, they upload it and they rig it to the file. We automatically understand that that's a dance that's supposed to run whenever the character is supposed to dance or in a very exciting moment, and so we match it and we show it whenever our engine believes it's the best moment. And this is going to become available in the coming months as soon as some of the games will go, some of the games or experiences in the metaverse will go live.
Is it just this closed beta? Is it just for gaming applications, or do you guys have other companies that are not in gaming that want to
That's
try this
actually
out?
the
And and if not, who do you think could also
So that's
benefit?
actually the, let's say, the kind of the fun part on our end. We started this focusing mostly on gaming, but then as we started talking with customers, and customers are usually the light in startup land. They give us tips on other applications. What we see is, I think there are applications which are similar and some other which are a bit more far in terms of let's say attribute to the gaming world. One interesting application is the advertising world. With immersive advertising
Yeah.
becoming more and more interesting, with VR, AR, XR in general, these characters can really make the change. Because I go back to the initial problem statement. What we solve is an engagement problem. Like, how do you make sure that my user stays there for more time, because if he stays there more time, he's more willing to. I get more money because I can monetize more, and he also spends. He has a better experience. Um, Other applications are more into, let's say, the training, more, let's say, more educational purposes, where you would like to have the
Yeah.
character explain information, and you may not want, of course, in this case, content is very important. That's why the agent's approach is really crucial. So you can define the content, you can give the explanation in a digestible way, very easy to understand. And here, let's say, our approach is to gamify the experience, because you can always have a chatbot that gives the same answer to 1,000 people, but that's not a personalized experience. As you were mentioning before, in the end, the 3D experiences should be personalized, should understand my path to how I got there, and that's what we really unlock and enable for creators. And the last part is more, let's say, that's something we recently saw coming, the a bit of the HR world, where if you want to reach out to
Mm.
your HR, or you want support from your company, etc., yes, you can talk to your human resources department, or you can talk to a character that is your HR buddy. That's a fun, I mean, it's
Oh man.
maybe funny, but that's something we actually saw, and we may soon be started working on. Imagine, you build an app, and in a let's say 100,000 people company, your HR is, I don't know, super far from you, so it's a bit complicated to reach. You still have a possibility, how do I get basic information, like how do I get my holidays, and instead of tapping into a huge Zendesk space or a huge FAQ center, you just ask a question, and you have a nice character, animating and making it fun for you. So that's something cool that we have seen, and it's gonna come. It's just a matter of time that more people will understand this potential, and more applications will come up.
I just thought of how this could be used in HR/ counseling purposes, where a lot of people just want to complain, like a lot of times just want to complain to the company's HR, right? And from the HR person's perspective, like they have a lot more important work to do, right? Right? Maybe someone's complaining about, like, hey, the soda machine's not working, the snacks machine is not working. Can you do something? Can you do something about it? Right? Like the HR person, like, yeah, like I don't know if it's HR office person, right? But yeah, some of these things I think will be very interesting to see, because this is like a way, like a way for people to like complain, right? And then it just doesn't go. It just goes into a black box, right? And then the black box somehow like spits back information. The person that's complaining just want to be heard.
Yeah,
So
but also,
it's funny.
some what we see is that, we also see the point, like if you place maybe an animal character instead of a human character, who you should be talking to, yes, somehow your anger, your willingness to frustrate, like, lowers significantly, because come on, you're talking to maybe, I don't know, a Pikachu character or some other animal character. You still want to get information, like, I don't know, when is the soda machine gonna be fixed, when is the coffee machine gonna be fixed. You don't need to reach out and send a very angry email to another human. You can just talk to a character who is gonna give you a nicer time, and is available 24/7. Whereas any human needs to
Right.
sleep at least 8 hours a day.
Right. And more importantly, it's going to respond in character, right? So like the Pikachu is going to respond with the information in
Yeah, of
Pika
course,
language.
and it's even gonna be fun, because like, you may even don't want to complain after that, because like, it's who doesn't love Pikachu? Come on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Let me what else do I want to cover here? So what is this? Yeah. So maybe you can talk. So we talked a little bit of, like, before this interview, right? About the different integrations, right? Like we're looking at integrating into the sandbox. What, like Sandbox, right? And they all have different game engines. And I know that you guys are built on Unity, but it's not a straight integration, because they're, although probably built on Unity, but there's like an abstraction. What's involved, for example, to integrate into the Sandbox? Because this is something that I would be very interested in.
Okay, so it's mostly a technical, it's an infrastructural, situation issue for the engine, because you need to make sure that what we are doing in terms of rendering animations, generating dialogues, calculating the most likely interaction is possible within the ecosystem. That's just a matter of enabling this possibility, especially because our models runs on servers which are placed in the cloud, so they need an internet connection to play. Of course, we'll in the next 6 months we may also be looking at possibilities to download our models, our engine, so that you can play it on your smartphone or on a VR set which is not connected to the internet. But at the moment it runs online, so it's just a matter of enabling our SDK to be working in their environment, and into the possibility of rendering and also understanding and rendering animations in their voxel world.
Okay, so my next question is I'll try to explain it a little bit. What you have these trial users, right, using the in the closed beta the software. What are you looking for from these trial users to know that this software is working as intended? What metrics are you looking for? Because I'm assuming that some of these games they're in development, and so for you to get feedback could take years.
So
Yeah.
I mean I can we can both respond here. I can respond on the business side. So in general,
Yeah.
what we see there is that, so first of all, there are some games which will go live probably in the next year, so we will get some feedback. Some feedback from playtests is good, but of course the major feedback will come
Yeah,
later, especially for our AAA games, complex infrastructures, they will come later. But that's also why we focus on the metaverse. We see the metaverse as a big thing, because it's just faster to build experiences. I mean, I saw your interview with Zachary last week. They build 10 games a month, 10 experiences a month. That's something that in another game ecosystem would not be possible. And just on metaverse platforms, it's made possible because it's easy to build a game, it's faster, and you have millions of users going to the platform every day to play a possible game. So that's how we see it from a business perspective. We need to balance these two things. We have some feedback. Of course, feedback sometimes differ, but we have seen that it converges at some point.
Yeah, no, and that's always a balance between these kind of feedbacks and also the performances of the algorithm. For these, there's actually different metrics that we use. Uh, I'm not going to deep dive into how we build these metrics, etc. But to give you a bit of understanding, there is, of course, the dialogue generation part where there are standard metrics, and even on these metrics, this is an open debate because it's quite hard to evaluate the relevance of an output of a text because between two different sentences, how do you prioritize one over the other? So there are metrics that account for this that we're using. And on our game engine metrics, it's about, we have metadata about different animations, a little bit like we talked about embeddings earlier. It's, let's say, a similar logic with the metadata that we have. We see how often basically the engine selects the most relevant one. And for this, we also have internal metrics to make sure that when something is wrong, when it's not picking the right metrics, we make sure that we learn from this and actually not do it again. And we're working on also, as you mentioned, integrating human in the loop feedback, especially in the playtest, not in the real environment, because it might harm the experience. But during the playtest, we also try to involve humans in the loop to provide feedback about, okay, the dialogue here is good, but the animation might be improved or something like this. So we can actually get this feedback to provide a tailored experience as well. So there's a combination between human feedback plus customer feedback from the business side and let's say more technical metrics that we use to evaluate the performances of our models.
got it. How do you guys think you'll monetize? And I know that that might be a question that you're not really thinking about, but what are some of the options here?
So I think monetization is in the AI era is kind of I'd say a big headache for many. In our case, I mean, it's a thought. It's something that we keep thinking about it, but in the end, it's something that our customers drive. So as I was mentioning, the most obvious way is I mean, what we do is that we increase engagement. Engagement means more playtime, more retention, more monetization. So the way we see it is that, of course, instead of having you pay upfront a fee for having an NPC there, why don't you pay per usage? So the more your players are gonna use it, the more retention you're gonna have, the more money you can make out of that character. Because I mean, potentially you can even charge players to use the character in specific experiences, or you want to reach a specific level, then you're gonna have access to the character. So there are different ways you can monetize, apart from, of course, the most obvious direct sales. Um, we believe that there is a point, and we already have some data on it, in which we can price, we can have fixed menu pricing. This really depends on data that we get, how many interactions per player, how often do players interact with the character, etc., etc. As at the moment, none of the games that we're working on are completely live. Some experience, we have some data on how in the playtest this performs, but as you know, playtests are not necessarily representative of how then a player, millions of players would interact with the character. Um, that's something we are looking at closely, and we probably in the near future we'll be able to have a distribution of interactions which will drive the possibility of having some sort of menu fixed pricing, which you say, okay, you want this cap of character, which you're gonna have this role, these main interactions, then that's gonna be the price without having a more usage based pricing. Even though I have to say, usage based one is something that has on the one hand the flexibility for the developer to say, okay, I'm not gonna pay upfront. I'm gonna pay if
Mm.
if someone is gonna use my character, and I can monetize it. And on the other, also gives us the possibility of it's kind of an investment that we do to the with developer, and say, okay, no upfront fees. We basically perform for you, and you're gonna see the results of that. And as for now, they're more than happy to pay for the result that we're getting.
Got it. Anything you want to add to that, Lucien?
It's very clear. Yeah, we're always driven by our customers, and we try to adapt to their needs, and how we can help them making this much more interactive, and yeah, that's the whole part of it.
Great. So, really interesting product, and maybe to end, I'd love to hear about what you guys see for the roadmap in the next 2 years.
So there are a couple of things we need to handle and we need to sort out. So as you know, as I was mentioning you, we already have a way to refine the amount of information you can give to the character. What we are working hard on at the moment are two main topics, which I think are going to take a couple of months to nail. One is to make sure that you can, from the no code tool, you can define actions for the character. At the beginning will be mostly running, walking, jumping, etc. But then these kind of actions can increase. Let's say we differentiate these actions from normal animations, or we can call them emotes, because they are a movement in the space to obtain, let's say, to reach a goal. So for instance, it can be pick a shovel, or reach a specific shop, or pick a specific clothing asset, etc. So there's something you need to achieve by doing that action. Whereas a jumping animation or a levitation animation, it's mostly entertainment, or it's a form of expression of the character. That's one thing. The other is really nailing the matching and the possible generation of the 3D poses. That's something we're already started working on. That it's quite research intensive. It will take a couple of it will take some months to before we are confident releasing something to out there. But we have seen results, interesting results already, and I do believe that it's going to be something incredibly powerful for the expression of these characters, because ideally what we strive to achieve is the possibility of making I use the expressions digital toys in the end. When every kid out there knows that it's so cool to have toys, but physical toys are constrained by the fact that you need to move them, they're not live. In the world, we have seen this transition to the digital world, in which now NFTs or animation, let's say representation of physical toys are quite interesting, but they're not animated. They have some utility format, but you cannot really do anything with them. There is a transition to the digital 3D world in which these toys might have a possibility to express themselves, and we want to enable this possibility of expression, because it will drive engagement and it will make 3D experiences much more fun than they are at the moment.
That sounds a little scary to
Why?
me, to be
No, come
honest.
on, why?
I mean, there's always these movies, horror stories, right, that are about like a talking doll, right?
Yeah.
Obviously,
I see
like
the point. I
we're
see the
not.
point. But for instance, it's I think that there's I think Lego or something, they launched a collection of crypto toys. It's quite famous,
Mm.
and I think it's really cool. The designs are really cool. I haven't bought one, but I've seen the demos. I mean, I don't think it's scary. I mean, especially if you think about how younger generation today interact with the digital world. I mean, they spend hours on TikTok, etc. They want content. They want incredibly amount of content, etc. And if you think about 20 years ago or 30 years ago when Tamagotchi came out, it was the same thing. It was incredibly scary because you had a small thing like this who you were supposed to raise and take care of. Today, there's not
Yeah,
really needed. You need to generate more content for people, and how can you do it by building more engaging experiences for them through these digital toys.
And that are
cool.
completely personalized as well. That's also
Yes.
something like you can have your buddy, virtual buddy. That's something really important as
Potentially, you can
well.
have your own version of Pikachu or whatever. It's yours, and it's not just a character, a peluche or something like sitting there. It will talk to you, will understand what you're doing.
Got it.
So yeah, that's
Cool. Great. So, yeah, anything else you
not
guys
really.
want to
I
add?
mean, thanks again for having us. It was really a real pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's. I hope we can chat again in maybe in a couple of months, of 6 12 months, so we can catch up on our progress.
Yeah.
And sure, as soon as we have more news, happy to share it with you.
Great. Yeah. Great talk. Really interesting to learn like everything you guys are doing, and thanks for explaining like the whole AI thing to me. So I think this is
pleasure.
going to be really cool. So
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jack.
great.
It was a pleasure as well to be there. And yeah, catch soon.